Mohamed al-Bashir has been appointed caretaker Prime Minister of the transitional Syrian government. Al-Bashir said in a televised address that he will remain in that role until the 1st of March next year. He ran the rebel-led Salvation government before the lightning offences swept into Damascus over the weekend that toppled the government of Bashar-al-Assad 2 days ago. Meanwhile, Israel has denied sending its troops further into Syrian territory after reports claimed that Israeli forces had been located 25 kilometers from capital Damascus. Israeli troops moved into the buffer zone in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights following the ousting of Bashar al-Assad. Israel has also been conducting airstrikes across Syria since the weekend in a bid to make sure that Syrian military equipment does not fall into rebel hands. The UN Special Envoy to Syria calling the strikes a very troubling development. Despite this, Israeli officials are adamant that they do not seek conflict with their neighbor, and in fact welcome the fall of Assad. In a closed-door meeting, the UN Security Council said it would not intervene in Syria's conflict and had taken limited and temporary measures to protect security. All eyes now on the power transition in Syria and possible consequences of those who supported Assad's regime. The Islamist rebel leader who led the offensive, that's Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, will take the country's reins. He says senior officials who were involved in torturing political prisoners under Assad will be named. Meanwhile, rescue workers in Damascus say they have concluded their search for detainees in secret cells at the Zadnaya military prison. That's a building synonymous with Assad rule and its tactics to eliminate dissent, nicknamed the slaughterhouse. Thousands gathered there earlier in search of loved ones, some locked up for years, as Syrians look ahead to a fresh start after years of war. And more, Trent Murray joins us live from the Israel-Syria border. Trent, Israel conducting more strikes into Syria. We just heard that it has given its reasons for why it needs to do so. That's despite criticism from at least 3 Arab states.
Yeah, that's right. This is still very much an active military zone there behind me. Off into the distance, you can see Syria, that demilitarized zone, effectively now militarized once again as those IDF tanks and troops continue to move in. They say that they are doing that indeed to ensure that what has happened in Syria doesn't pose any sort of threat to Israel. But they are also saying that they are launching extensive air operations. We indeed continue to hear IDF jets up in the sky here as they cross into Syrian airspace. And what it appears that they're trying to do is destroy the remnants of Bashar al-Assad's army. We've seen air bases targeted, naval ports, weapons storage areas. And the Israeli justification for this is they want to see, well, they don't want to see those weapons fall into the hands of extremists or people that could turn those weapons not just on Israel but other countries in this region.
As we mentioned as well, HTS leader, now that's a rebel group most dominant in leading this offensive that took out the Assad regime. He has said he will name officials complicit in the former president's alleged crimes on human rights. Accountability, a very big part on Syria reaching some kind of resolution and moving forward. What do we know about this plan to bring those culpable to justice?
Well, this is really critical, and I think this is what the world is watching, is how this HTS-led government authority will conduct itself in a post-Assad government or a post-Assad Syria. Will they seek retribution against officials that were involved in the regime? Indeed, we are getting signs that they will look to ensure that those involved in torture are held accountable. We are hearing from some of those rescuers that they found a morgue with some 40 bodies in it, inside of Damascus, bodies which showed signs of torture. But also, I think this HTS-led group are also trying to send a message both to the Syrians but also the region that they will be inclusive and try to protect and work with some of Syria's smaller minorities like the Christians, the Druze and the Kurds. So look, time really will tell, but we are starting to see the sort of machinery of the government come together there with that news of Mohamed al-Bashir being appointed as the caretaker Prime Minister. He will be in place, we are told, until March 1, 2025. He has previously run effectively a quasi-government under Syrian opposition territory, which was run by the HDS pre this lightning offensive.
And Trent, in Israel, of course, the Israeli Prime Minister taking the stand for the first time for 3 separate cases. Now, he was first indicted in 2019, as we saw earlier outside the court, people turning up in support and also in opposition to him. How is this trial being viewed locally?
Well, I think those protesters outside the courthouse really are a microcosm of the country more broadly. This is an incredibly divisive court case. Supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu will passionately defend him out on the streets in conversation, saying that this is a distraction away from the real national security concerns facing Israel. But for opponents of Benjamin Netanyahu, they say impropriety has occurred here and he needs to be held accountable. Certainly, we got a sense overnight here of the toll this is taking on the Prime Minister. He gave a press conference in Tel Aviv, incredibly combative with the Hebrew-speaking journalists there, snapping at them, accusing them of not supporting national security. So clearly he knows that this is a potential issue for him and the longevity of his government. We, of course, will have to wait and see how the court trial pans out. But indeed, he is saying that it should not be happening right now because his Prime Ministership needs to be focusing on some of those external issues like Syria and Lebanon and Gaza. But his opponents will say, no, Israel is still a democratic country based on the rule of law and this court process needs to play out.
Well, thanks. Trent Murray reporting live there from the border between Israel and Syria.